the easiest thing to say is listen to your arm, listen to your arm, listen to your arm. You know, I think us dads sometimes, and maybe to a lesser extent the coach, but definitely the dad, when our kid says my arm's bothering me a little bit, sometimes we're like, well, how much? Like, can't you just work your way through it? So that's the one thing that you don't. Like, you just don't work your way through it. So you stop, you know, it used to be you ice, now you floss, you know, you do these things to try to stop the damage wherever that might be. You might consult someone that has maybe deeper understanding of the situation. But look, if there's a pitcher and he wants to be a pitcher, he needs to throw hard. Like that's the way the game is evolving. Like you have to throw hard. So the stress response cycle says that our body will respond to the stress we put on it. So it's difficult to be a hard thrower if you never stress your arm. So at some point you have to stress your arm. And long toss is a great way to do that. And there's other ways to do it. I know, you know, drive line, the Florida Baseball Ranch, and there's all these different ways to do it. Am I an advocate of it? Absolutely, because I've read all the material. Are some people ill-equipped to handle it? Yes, they are ill-equipped to handle it. They're not mature enough, their body isn't developed enough. So I always approach it with a sensitive nature that says, from a general standpoint, it absolutely works. From a very specific standpoint, you have to be sensitive to what kids are doing. I'll say this: the more flexible kids seem to be able to adapt to it a little bit better. The real big, strong kids, the ones that throw hard because they're big, really sensitive to asking them to do that. But the ones that are loose and limber and generate velocity through more mobility than strength. My instinct and my experience says that they're better off doing some of those things, because when you start to muscle things, eventually your arm says, whoa, how much are you really asking me to do here? But when you generate velocity, just some free and easy fluid mechanics, it usually does. It helps, at least with my experience, and the research says it does, and my experience says it does. Did you have a question?
As far as pitching stuff, I coach 10U.
Yep.
And I'm anticipating this year we're going to see a lot more, you know, curveballs,
Yep.
that kind of stuff. What's your thoughts on two-part, teaching it as a pitcher,
Yeah.
and also, you know, hitting drills like bouncing on the floor, or I think you do the one with like the yellow ball, I think,
Yeah.
balls in the hand or something.
How many like that question? How many think that's a legitimate question?
Very legit.
Yeah. You know, this thing right here, when this thing rears its head, it's a game changer. It's like, okay, now we're live. Now all bets are off, right? So you absolutely have to address it, and it does give you a competitive advantage when your guys start to throw it. You know, throwing the curveball in and of itself, I think you could grab 5 experts on pitching and you would ask them, does throwing the curveball hurt your arm? And I think the answer would be no. It doesn't, and I think most people would go, he's right, it doesn't. Research says the curveball doesn't hurt your arm. Here's what I think happens. I think it is such an advantage at the young age. I think when the pitcher realizes that the batter can't hit it, I think it jumps right to the forefront of his arsenal, and then I think he overuses it, and that's why it hurts your arm. Because now all of a sudden, mechanically, they start to do things that are out of the norm, whereas they trained all winter long on throwing good firm fastballs and their arms synced up to throw a fastball and it's coming out of their hand correctly. And then all of a sudden, whether they throw it well or not, like you can throw a curveball, and I am of the opinion that you should teach them how to throw it as early as possible. Like, just here's how you do it. Okay, if you're going to mess around, you're going to play around, this is what it's going to look like. This is what we're going to do. And some people prescribe some safer ways for younger kids. And I know Nate Everett does. If you ever run into him, he taught his son how to throw one at a young age, and it was effective. And Brady seems to be healthy. But so they throw this thing, and then all of a sudden they're like, ooh, I can get these guys out whenever I want. I can just start ripping that thing up there. And, you know, in some sense, I get it, because you've got, you know, if you take this flexible lens perspective, you know, if you say he shouldn't be throwing curveballs, and then you say, you know, if he's not successful, he might quit the game. If he's not successful and he gets pounded on the mound, he might not enjoy the game. He's having success. throwing that curveball right now. You know, he loves who he is right now. You know, maybe tell him, hey, it's a great pitch for you. You're gonna have to trust me on this. I'm gonna put a number on your curveball, like have someone track it and just say I'm gonna limit you to 5 per inning if that's what it takes. Just because I'm trying to protect you down the road. I know it's an effective pitch. I just don't want to lean on it so much that potentially it might hurt your arm. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, and then maybe the research does say the less often you throw your fastball, you do lose your fastball. Okay, so if I haven't thrown my fastball in 7 consecutive pitches, when I do go to my fastball, I have lost a little mile per hour. So you gotta throw your fastball to keep your fastball. And at down the road, taking the long view perspective, you know, people aren't going to be so interested in you as a pitcher if you've got a breaking ball without a fastball. Like, they do want to see that fastball. So that would be both sides of that fence from the pitching perspective. We don't run from the breaking ball. We recognize that it's a reality in the game. If you have a good one, we'll use it. We're not going to overuse it. And then we're going to take the long view and recognize that we're going to keep your arm safe. And we're going to keep establishing that fastball. Now, how to hit the breaking ball? You know, the best thing is to hit them. Okay, the best thing is to hit them. So the way I always introduce the curveball is that the first thing I do is I just throw them where they see it and they swing at it. Like, if you can throw it, or if you have anyone on your staff that can throw it, go ahead and have them throw it. Okay, just the curveball, just by itself. If you don't have anyone that can do it, set up a machine and let them start to see the arc and let them start to adjust accordingly. Okay, but because they just need to start to see this thing in flight. Now, where people make a mistake is when they introduce the fastball and the curveball. Okay, so what you absolutely have to do is you absolutely have to teach aggression before discipline when you're developing a hitter. All right, in a perfect world, they'd never chase a bad curveball, and they'd only ever swing at the curveballs that are in the strike zone. But they haven't developed their brain yet. They don't have nearly enough experience to do that. So you can't penalize the kid that's swinging at the breaking ball in the dirt when he's only ever seen 50 curveballs. Like, that's an unrealistic expectation. So what I'll do is if I go to unpredictable, what I call that, unpredictable, I send them in a no-take mode. Like, just swing. Just train yourself to swing at the ball. Okay, we'll figure the rest out later, but I don't want them to have a choice between swing and not swing, because that'll complicate matters. Right now, the goal is to get them to hit the breaking ball. And now that I've introduced this fastball, now I've got a second option here, and I'm really going to slow them down cognitively. Like, they're really going to get handicapped if they have to discern ball, strike, fastball, curveball. It's debilitating. It's too much. So I gave them 2 choices now, but now I'm going to at least say, but you're swinging. Like, you're swinging. Okay, so now really you only have 2 choices. You have swing at the fastball or swing at the curveball. Okay, so we've gone from 4 to 2, and it's a little bit easier. And let them be an athlete. Like, just let them go try. And obviously they're not going to hit all of them, right? But, you know, that's me. And many times I'll do it on a knee where I'll do this, and sometimes I'll stand up and I'll do this. It doesn't have to be a great one, but I'm just trying to get them to swing. And if you can't throw a curveball, just throw slow. Just back off and just flip one up there, just so they can start to feel this component, okay? And then what I'll start to do is I'll start to say, all right, now let's see, and now I'll be honest with you, 11, 12 is that gap. 11-year-olds look awful in an unpredictable environment. Awful. Okay, I can take them in my cage, and this is across the board. This is the best 11s. Like, 11-year-olds, generally I can embarrass them with 2 pitches. The minute I throw the breaking ball in, they're really struggling. And that's good. Like, they need to fail. They need to fail because 11-year-olds become 12-year-olds. And then when they're 12, then they're going to hit that thing. And it's like this magic moment. And it really, I think, is a function of just experience. They have literally just seen more curveballs. And then they start to hit that curveball. And then they start to recognize that, this thing that I used to flinch on, I should hold my ground on. That actually is just something I might want to hit. All right, and then, oh, that thing that's sitting right here, if I see it pop up, that's something that I'm supposed to take. It looks inviting now, but it's going to break out of the zone. And as a 12-year-old, I take that. But they need to experience this in a trial and error simulation. That's it. Like it isn't like this magic bullet. This is what, like we do trial and error. And the other thing that I will say, which I found to be helpful, my son has agreed that it's very helpful, is I'll do angled batting practice. An angled batting practice is if a kid's sitting, if generally we just face head on, I'll really go over here and I'll just throw at this angle to him. And now that's right on right. Okay, that's right on right. Me righty to a right-handed, and that's the more often occurring situation, right on right. The left on left, of course, would be difficult. But now you could simulate a left as a righty if you slid over. But the lefties have an advantage at a younger age because the changeup hasn't popped up yet. So that curveball is moving into a lefty. So it's not until the changeup rears its head that the things sort of even out. But if you angle over, you can create that same direction without throwing that curveball. And that's really helpful if you're just trying to simulate the curveball.
You made a motion there. I was watching. So recently, someone shared with me that to hit a curveball, as long as you're able to keep your hands from leaking forward and keep your knee from getting over your foot, you're still in a position to make an athletic move to get to a curveball. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
You just did a demonstration. You lunged.
Yeah.
But is that what you were showing?
Well,
If you did that?
So if you asked a big league hitter, hey, what's the one pitch that you just hate? And most of them would say the changeup, like the good changeup. I don't know. It's because it gives you no visual cues. Like there's nothing. A really good one comes out of the hand, and there's nothing that says changeup. Okay, but the curveball pops a little bit, so it does give you a visual cue. But at that young age, when these kids don't have that visual experience, this tilt, this thing that moves and is soft, is so darn difficult to compete with. So what happens at this young age is they've never had to experience depth on a pitch. Like they've been training their whole lives that when this thing lands, this thing fires. I mean, that's just the way it works. They get synced up and this happens. And when this lands, this fires. And then now all of a sudden, this curveball pops up and this fires. And now that ball that used to be here is now sitting out there, right? And then therein lies the trouble. Like even if they could see it, now you're talking about when those hands get to this position, how do I delay any of this? So the one technical component that sort of it needs to be addressed, and I'm always of the opinion that it's better addressed through trial and error than drill work. I'm of that opinion. Now drill work is trial and error, but if you can do it from the actual distance, that's always ideal. Problem is that we adults, 40-year-old men, have a hard time recreating that. Okay, so then we rely on drill work to the best of our advantage. But whenever this front foot grabs, right, there is an absolute tendency that hand's going to come in with it. It is going to happen. And there's a couple ways that you can delay it, and you can visually think of athletes desperately trying to hang on and not let those hands come forward. I don't want to get too technical here, but eventually your better hitters will be able to identify and then recognize, and then when they fire, it will fire simultaneously. But this front leg, this athleticism that athletes tend to have, this front leg is a mechanism where it can delay until you do fire. It can hang on. That is a thing we say, just flex through it. It is a way that you can hang on and keep those hands back. So if you see your kids competing like crazy to try to do that, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to delay. It's down, right? Well, once it's down, this wants to come. So they're just going to try to absorb that energy and try to keep their hands back. Eventually that may happen less and less and less as their visual experience starts to catch up, and then you'll start to see them do a little bit better job. But that's how I would train the curveball. And I would absolutely teach aggression over discipline at the beginning. I would get them swinging.
And I'll remind you, like Kyle shared this a few times about that idea of like he'll tell players to get off the fence, and that was the biggest frustration that I saw with curveballs was